Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank Sol for inviting me to come and speak this afternoon. I was involved in the previous conference in helping one of the speakers in a comparison of intermediary appropriate adult role, and I'm pleased to be here to be able to speak with you. I'm aware that this is a kind of killer slot, the second one after lunchtime, the sun's shining, you've had a good weekend, etc, etc. I've only got 5 content slides. I have got quite a lot of data that is not on the slides, so you may want to take some notes in regard to that. What I'd like to speak of with you is, in terms of the appropriate adult service across Scotland, the as is likely to be, and at the end I have an ask. And I think for me from this morning, and I've taken some notes to incorporate them into the presentation, is the word fairness is paramount, and this is about communication difficulty, and the new Act is quite clear on that. And it's across the justice system: victims, witnesses, suspects, accused persons. And I think first of all, I'd like to pay credit to the many volunteer appropriate adults across Scotland who are not paid for what they do, the local authorities who are not funded in the provision of appropriate adults. And it's a burden on the funding, and it's a burden on people who mainly work for the local authorities and go out to perform that role. So it's a burden on their core role. And the Scottish Appropriate Adult Network, who since 1993 have helped deliver the service across Scotland with no additional funding and no legislative authority, a collaborative group. There are 21 appropriate adult schemes across 32 local authorities. They have different formats. So we have 12 that are solely local authorities. We have 1 that is a combination of local authority and NHS. We have 6 that are contracted. And contracted NHS we have 1, and we have 1 voluntary provision in Orkney. And I say again, many are not paid, and the local authority workers, and all are registered under the Protecting Vulnerable Groups. I'll talk a bit of background before we go into the first slide. So let's speak briefly just now, we'll go into it in a few minutes, the Criminal Justice Scotland Act 2016. There are provisions already in the Act for oversight and standardisation of the appropriate adult service across Scotland. So I say that up front, and I'll go into more detail on that shortly. In October 2015, the Scottish Government intended to just have a light touch and adopt the service as it was into the Act. But issues were raised to the Scottish Government around the exact remit of the appropriate adult, funding, accessibility, in other words, getting an appropriate adult, and consistency of service provision. So, due to these concerns, the Scottish Government decided to hold consultation on amendments for new regulations within the Act. And I believe that these are not far away, and a lot of consultation has been done, and a lot of us have been involved in that who are in this room. More of this just further on. So the First Minister last year, in terms of the government programme for 2016-17, gave a commitment to urgent action to review communication support provided to help child, vulnerable witnesses and accused persons within the criminal justice system. So please note, the criminal justice system, the whole system. Almost around that time as well, the then Home Secretary, Theresa May, had commissioned a study into the delivery of appropriate adult services across England and Wales. It's called There to Help. And it was published around about October last year. And what they found was that out of 1.4 million detentions, 280,000, around a fifth, were mentally vulnerable. Their words, not mine. And within that group, there were 45,000 requests for appropriate adults. So going back to the figures that Malcolm had said earlier, around a fifth were designated as mentally vulnerable, and only 1 in 6 received the services of an appropriate adult. And Theresa May said, Appropriate adults provide vital support and help to demystify what can be a confusing, sometimes frightening experience in police custody. So what is the national picture just now? And I've given you some of the background for that. And you can see up there, diverse provision. There are differing models. I've already covered some of that. There are differing standards. There is no national oversight of governance, although there are many examples of good local governance. There's varied training, but then SAN have done some good work in terms of guidance in relation to court training. And it's not statutory and no LA funding. So having been interested in the There to Help study, I tried to look for any study in Scotland that was available about people in custody who suffered from mental ill health or learning disability. And I looked at the 18 to 25-year-old age group. And as the basis of my research, I looked at the Scottish Offenders Index 2016, a report by the Commons Justice Committee, Prison Reform Trust and the Mental Health Foundation. So 18 to 25-year-olds are attributed to be responsible for 40% of crime. They represent approximately 1/10 of the population. They're about 1/3 of those sent to prison, and they're 1/3 of the social and economic cost of crime, according to the research. So I looked then at detected crimes across Scotland, and therefore people who were in custody or charged and in that particular group. So purely in this group, based on detected crime, population and area crime figures, you could expect the use of appropriate adults in that group 2015-16 to be 11,669. Now this is not scientific, but it tends to reflect somewhat the Dare to Help study, which was scientific. And then I heard Malcolm's figures this morning about 162,208 detentions, arrests, and 20% of those had declared that they had a mental health illness or a communication difficulty, and that equates to 44,000 people. So I'm now going to give you the actual appropriate adult uses over the last, since 2013. So 2013-14, there were 5,183 appropriate adult requests across Scotland. Included in these figures as a facilitator in court, in other words providing communication support in court, there were 351. In 2014-15 there were 5,442 requests for appropriate adults. Within that there were 460 court supports, facilitation. And in 15 and 16, last year, there were 5,351 with 572 facilitation supports in court. There are 528 appropriate adults across Scotland. There are varying groups of them in terms of need and use. And when you take out 4 areas in Scotland which are lean in terms of service delivery, in other words, they're dealing with quite a few calls, you're left with 495 appropriate adults, dealing last year with 2,335 calls, or roughly 5 each per annum. If you go deeper, in some areas, the use is 1.3 per appropriate adult per year, through to 3.5, and the four areas vary between 269 for one appropriate adult in a year, 57, 73, and 50. And for me, and for discussion, because this is a discussive forum, and that's what the forums are for next, and I'm putting this out there, that kind of indicates experience levels, practical knowledge, confidence. So for example, the example given this morning that I found very telling about the police were in my face, I didn't get time to respond and all that. There needs to be a build-up of experience and confidence to be able to challenge that. And it's also about training. Let me talk a bit about our own area of service provision, and I'm only talking about that because that's what I know about. And I'm aware that there are many good appropriate adult services across Scotland. So this isn't my slide, this is the slide of our oversight group, the Health and Social Care Partnership in Ayrshire. So this is their slide. And 2.5 years ago they decided to outsource their service to release people back to their desks was one of their main aims, and to provide a responsive, effective service. And we ran a pilot. So it's a lead partnership model with East Ayrshire leading for East, South and North. We have a monitoring group of senior managers from the 3 partnerships who we meet quarterly, and they go over our performance, finance, the number of calls, the finite detail of these calls, which I don't really have time to share with you here. The benefits of the model are that it is cost effective, it is coordinated. We work off of 2 virtual phone numbers which are well known to police, courts and sheriff clerks. And our response time is 43 minutes, but I don't think that's a hugely important. It is an important figure to have a quick response, but it has to be a quality response as well. And I stress there are other areas providing a service like this with good local governance. In 2016, we had 503 calls, with 196 of these for court. Our current average is about 40 a month. What can you expect and what should you expect in terms of service delivery? An experienced, well-trained, appropriate adult within an hour. An explanation of the role. And I'm going to be bluntly honest in terms of the role because I have an ask at the end. No client confidentiality. In other words, and we've been in this position, our appropriate adults, and it's difficult. And it's even more difficult in an area like Orkney where you're likely to know the person who you are supporting. If something is disclosed to the appropriate adult, they are in the evidence chain and they must tell that to the police. And I know that's a big barrier here, and I'll speak about that in a minute. I use the word brief consultation because it is brief, and we've heard quite a lot about that today. I don't think it's long enough, and neither do my appropriate adults. All the people I work with in Orkney are down in the borders. I think that's a negative aspect. You will most definitely receive, and I am passionate about this, as are my appropriate adults and our team, you'll receive communication support delivered caringly from experienced people with a strong background in communication support, well trained. We also provide support through to court. This was not our decision, this was Ayrshire wanted a service that went right through. And I've given you all the stats and the data for that. We also provide support in terms of procurator fiscal interaction before court. So for example, a rape victim, the case is not being proceeded, the procurator fiscal wants to explain this to the person who has a learning disability, the appropriate adult will be there to help them understand why the case is not being proceeded with. What's the future? The Criminal Justice Scotland Act 2016, Chapter 2, and for those who want to refer to it, sections 98 to 106, talks about support for vulnerable persons across the justice system. And I know some people have been speaking to in the audience, it's not just about learning disability, it's about the ability to communicate at a time when you may be under huge stress within a police station, a court. And I've been in court many times in public inquiries, and I find it very stressful. An inspection function, possibly, and I'm only speaking about the outcomes of the consultation which the Scottish Government have done since 2015. An inspection function probably with the Care Inspectorate and hopefully appropriate adults registered with the Care Inspectorate. Oversight by the Mental Welfare Commission at a higher level. National standards, training, but also with aspects of local solutions to local problems, because each area in Scotland has a different type of demand and response. And I'd like to throw in here other agencies, because we're here talking about in police custody. There are a large number of other agencies who interview people as suspects on tape in quite extended interviews for often very serious crimes which are reported to the Procurator Fiscal, like DWP, the Borders Agency, Marine Scotland, where there's significant organised crime, and is that included in the legislation and who's providing support there? And I think that's an important one maybe for discussion. What's my ask? My ask is that, I think what I'm trying to show you is that there are quite a large number of appropriate adults across Scotland. And I think many of them have, most of them have, good knowledge. They've worked in the role for many years. SAN has been going since 1993. So is there an argument for a tighter group, responding individually, as we heard from the Northern Ireland example, to a specific need requested? We are finding that more and more of our appropriate adult support in Ayrshire is for planned interviews by the police. We provide the 24/7, 7 days a week service, and urgent call-outs through the night are reducing. So just to support what Kirsty said, more and more are arranged interviews so that the time element isn't quite as crucial, although we're able to respond to that quickly. So my argument is that there's not a huge difference between the appropriate adult role and the role of the intermediary. And I have a vision of an interview room just from earlier that's getting quite busy with a whole different number of people here. And it's about support, it's about justice, and it's about fairness. So I throw that out for discussion. Most definitely, client confidentiality is my biggest ask, because it really does curtail the appropriate adult role and the relationship they can build with the person who's accessing the service. I had one solicitor recently refer to them as a bunch of grasses, quite amusingly. But it's very difficult. And to follow someone through the justice system, from interview at 2 o'clock in the morning to perhaps interaction with the Procurator Fiscal to court, we can't do that, because if they've been involved in the evidence gathering process, there is a high probability they will be a witness in the court process. So the confidentiality thing is very important. We've got to be very careful how we deploy appropriate adults at police request and then later to the court, so there's no a conflict of interest there. And I think through support is also important. And I just throw this into the mix, and I know it's not the total subject of discussion here, but in terms of sex offenders back in the community, they have to interact with the police fairly frequently when they are back in the community. They have to disclose bank accounts, they have to leave passport details, change of addresses, they go through assessment interviews, and very often are not supported. So when the First Minister spoke about the justice system, I think we need to look at that in its widest terms. And I thank you for listening, and I appreciate Sol for inviting me. Thank you.